What is the most insensitive thing you've ever been asked? About 3 weeks after my brother died, I went back to work. This lady and her daughter came in, never seen her before in my life. She proceeds to introduce herself to me as a good friend of my mother. Never heard her name before, saw her face, didn't see her at the funeral. My manager was close by. She starts to say how sorry she is to hear of his passing and goes on and on. I start getting upset. My manager starts to approach us. The lady says, "Oh, how did he die? I heard he killed himself. Is that true?" I froze. My manager grabs me and says to the lady, "Excuse me, she's needed in the back, and if you're not going to buy anything, you need to leave." I turned around and walked to the stockroom with tears running down my face. She was the best manager I ever had. Thank you, Joanna. Wait, so was this lady actually just a total random person? Did you ever figure out how the hell she knew about your brother? When I explained this to my mum said she was a busybody that went to high school with her. She knew everyone's business. I lived in a smallish town and my brother died at the age of 21 of suicide. She probably heard it through the grapevine. Soon after I got home from cremating my child, someone asked if the cremation left chunks of bone, and if so, do they grind that down? Thankfully I saw the humour in it, largely because I could see his wife wanted to kill him. This is something you ask the employees at the funeral home, not the attendees of the funeral. Honestly, not enough people respect those employees. They have to see so much death and cremate so many people. I have a seizure-like disorder, chorea athetosis. They present themselves in these really inconvenient episodes where I lose partial control of body parts. One time I was on a date with a dude, and after I told him of my situation, he said, "Wow, it'd be pretty hot to have you seize while we're having sex. Think you could arrange that?" Didn't bother with him after that. Your partner is having a seizure. Do you A. fetishize their medical condition and go down on them right then and there? B. Call an ambulance? So, this actually happened to me. I briefly dated a girl that was epileptic, and it turns out that various kinds of overstimulation can trigger a seizure. She was on top. It was... I don't even know what to think. It was... interesting. When I told my mother I finally had a girlfriend, her reply was pretty classic. "I recommend you be very cautious of any girl that's interested in you. What do you really have to offer? Not much." Gee, thanks Mum. I guess the girl was really just after my kidneys. Edit. For the record, I love my mum. This was her misguided way of being overprotective of her naive youngest son. Also, for the record, I do have a lot to offer, and I have a smoking hot wife who's not trying to sell my kidneys on the black market, as far as I know. Keep an eye on her. She might be playing the long con. Yikes, that stinks for your mum. I'm going to be straight up. The kidney thing made me laugh and think of Charlie the Unicorn. One time, someone asked, "You know, adoptive father isn't your real dad, right?" No, he's not my biological parent, but he is still my dad nonetheless. What a hurtful thing to say. I had a friend who was adopted. One time I was out with him and his mother shopping, and someone said, "He isn't your real child, right?" after he called her mum. He is tan and has Latin American traces, and she is very white. Her reply was priceless. "This isn't your real problem." Didn't you have more acne the last time I saw you? My skin is horrible to me. I have eczema on top of just being super oily, so when I was in elementary or middle school, I had more acne than most of my peers. I was often ostracized and even teased because of it. Even my own parents treated me like I wouldn't be attractive until I had zero acne. Keep in mind it was nowhere near the severe cystic acne some people get. It was just more acne than what was normal at my age, and looking back, everyone was overreacting. But at the time, my skin had become my biggest insecurity. Eventually, I got really into skincare and started to see results. The guy that asked me that question was seeing me for the first time in 3 years, and it brought back all the shame I felt about my skin. I don't understand why some people are so mean, ignorant, or rude. My guess is they were never taught any better. Even so, some people just don't give a thing about how they affect others. I worked as a waiter for a few years in high school. Elderly gentleman came up to me and asked, "Is it okay to be dealing food with all that acne?" My parents had a restaurant, and they hired this sweet little 14-year-old who was super keen to work. She had a birth deformity in her hands that left her with one thumb and one finger on each hand. She would deliver the plates one at a time, for obvious reasons. A rude old man obviously didn't look at her hands and lectured her on how if she wants to succeed as a waitress, she needs to learn to carry multiple plates. She nodded and was polite and continued to wait on them. My dad didn't want to embarrass her further by making a big deal in front of her, but when the table left, he followed them out and informed the rude old dude about her hands. All his family were super embarrassed and they haven't ever come back. My ex-mother-in-law ran into me and asked when I was due. Thing is, she knew I had miscarried a child with her son, one of the reasons we split up, and also knew that I could not have children. I just happened to have a still slightly swollen abdomen after a full and total hysterectomy at the time. Needless to say, I had a very hormonal and emotional response. "Well, aren't you happy you had a miscarriage then? Or you be a single mum now?" Asked by my mum while trying to comfort me after my fiancé cheated. Yeah, no actually, a late traumatic miscarriage plus depression plus hormones does not make me happy, even if he did cheat, but thanks. My brother's high school chem teacher had a C-section. A student asked her, "Do you think you deserved the child if you couldn't have her naturally?" My mum wasn't able to breastfeed me and was actively bullied by her mum's group for it because she wasn't doing things the natural way. This kind of thing is insane. Yes, if you can't feed the baby through your breast, you should just let it starve. I hate mum competition. If the baby gets here and it's healthy, it doesn't matter how it came out. It doesn't matter how you feed the baby as long as you feed it. As a 19-year-old disabled woman, I've been asked tons of insensitive things. The most is probably a tie between someone asking me if I'm using a walker for the perks and if I'm faking my disability for better accommodation at university. I can't handwrite, can barely walk without assistance, and can't stand for periods of time. What are the perks and where can I get them? Why did you give him the money? My manager's response to me telling her I got robbed at gunpoint in our store. I don't know, at that moment I just felt that maybe my life was more important. Well, I hope you like your life more than that $300 because it's coming right out of your paycheck. I had a mandatory one-on-one meeting with my high school counsellor about college prep, and the first thing he does when I walk in is scan me with his eyes and says, "Well, I guess we don't need to worry about filing your college athletics form now, do we?" And put the form I came in there for to swim in college back in his desk. There appears to be some confusion. I'm a male and the counsellor was implying I was scrawny, and ultimately I decided not to swim in college because the school I chose was D1 and feeds directly into the US Olympic swim team, and I'm not that good. Did you swim in college then? No, I asked for the form and he let me fill it out, but ultimately I couldn't swim since I chose to go to a college that essentially feeds directly into the US Olympic team, and I'm not that good, ha. They asked how my daughter was murdered. I said a knife. They then said, "But I mean how?" You found her, tell me how. What did she look like? Was she tortured? To answer a few questions. This was not a member of law enforcement. They don't ask questions like that. This was a stranger who saw our story on the news and came up to me in a crowded public place when I was with my older daughter and newborn grandson. I did not react with violence. I was still in shock and numb. It was a surreal experience. I responded very loudly that her questions were inappropriate. She came up to me talking super loud that she had seen us on the news, so she got everyone's attention. I figured I'd speak loud enough for everyone to hear, in case any of them didn't know it was rude to ask things like that they'd learned that day. She then walked away. Took a picture, heard her camera go off as she pointed it at us, then called someone and proceeded to loudly tell them that she'd talked with us. I wish I could say that this was the only inconsiderate person we've dealt with, but sadly I can't. But I will say we have had more positive interactions with strangers than negative. My experience on Reddit has been mostly positive. You are all amazing. I joined because my Rosora always kept telling me about it. She loved no sleep, and I never experienced Reddit until she was gone. I'm so sorry for your loss and all the horrible things you've had to put up with. Wishing you the best. Why did you tell me, and what did you do to make him do it? Asked by a family member after I told them about the abuse I suffered from my ex-husband. Finally felt safe to talk about it after 6 years, and that was the response. Wow. Strange to think strangers on the internet are more caring than your own family sometimes. Hope you're doing okay. I can't get a good shot. Would you mind moving? Said my cousin sitting behind me at my grandfather's funeral. I'm still mad I didn't throw him in the casket too. I just had a baby in November. At my husband's father's funeral in January, his aunt, who he hasn't seen in a while, decided it was the perfect time to take pictures of us and the baby. A few days later on Facebook there's a picture of us holding the baby in all black with puffy red faces and the caption, "OMG, my new niece is so adorable, beautiful family." I struggled with trichotillomania as a kid. My mum tried all kinds of things to help me quit the habit, but since it wasn't the root problem, just a symptom of anxiety, most of her attempts made it worse instead of better. I remember one time when my cousins were over for lunch. We were all gathered around the table enjoying our food and having a pleasant conversation, when out of nowhere my mum announced to everyone, "Have you noticed that she has no eyelashes? She always pulls them out." Everyone turned to stare at me, and one of my cousins said disgustedly, "Why would you do that?" I'm so sorry. I feel you. As someone who still has this, it's quite maddening. The root cause is my OCD. I literally have to pull the same amount out on each side, or else it bothers me and I won't stop until I'm satisfied. I once had a huge gap between my lashes and had a friend point it out in front of our other group of friends. All night I was questioned and asked to see my lashes and told how weird I looked. I hope you're better now. Oh, so you want a Twix? I'm 30 now but grew up with a lisp. Was in speech therapy for years. When I was about 8 years old or so, I went up to a concession stand at my brother's Little League game. Asked to buy a Twix. The teenage guy behind the counter, trying to impress his lady co-worker, decided to repeat my words back to me. Made me cry. One of the only times in my life I've ever seen my mum go full mama bear. She asked me why I was upset, and when I told her, she marched up to that dinky little stand and tore the guy a new one. But yeah, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw this question. Weird how little things like that stick with you. Some people suck, but then you get to see the ones who don't, like my mum. Defender of the little people. Love her. I can relate with you. I have a stuttering problem, and I'm very conscious about it. It only happens when I'm either excited or nervous. I was told a few times in school and college to, well, spit it out then. It made me feel horrible. I broke my back when I was a teenager, and I'm paralysed from the waist down. A girl from school asked me, "Are you planning on killing yourself?" Me? What? No, why would I kill myself? Her. It's just, if I was in your situation. Well, her life must have sucked to begin with. How does it feel to know your mother is burning in hell? After telling my friend's mum that my family didn't really subscribe to God and religion and all that, she didn't miss a beat, and then tried to double down why she was right. My best friend's dad, John, passed away very suddenly and unexpectedly. She has a big family. Mum is one of 8, Dad is one of 7, and they were all devastated by the loss. They all came together to mourn and to celebrate John's life. Family members were sharing funny stories and memories of John. Some of his military buddies came to offer their condolences and talk about their time with John. It was all heartwarming and wonderful, until John's tone-deaf sister, May, decided to say, "Well, you know, I just wonder if John is in hell because he died so suddenly and wasn't prepared. I wonder if he'd gone to confession lately and begged for forgiveness. I worry for his soul. You never know when you're going to die." The room went silent, and people just kind of stared at her for a couple of moments in silence. Thankfully, one of John's best friends chimed in again with another great story, and we all moved on. Okay, mate. Way to be a rude guy at possibly the worst time ever to your brother and his family, no less. The fact that John was faithfully married for 40 years, raised and provided for 4 children, and was a hard-working and honest man, I guess counts for absolutely nothing?